Hello everyone, my name is Meghan LeVota and I am an ENFJ, and I am about to show you an interview that ENFP Crystal did with an ISTP named Jess. So Crystal, who if you don't know is the co-host of my podcast Synchronic Saturdays, she recently did an interview with an ISTP named Jess, who you might know from the comment sections of Synchronic Saturdays. And she just did this impromptu interview, and then she was like, wait a minute, I don't want to put this on my channel, I want to put it on your channel because I want more people to see the lovely conversation between an ENFP and an ISTP. So I was like, of course, Crystal, I would love nothing more than that. So just so you know, ENFPs and ISTPs do not share any of the same functions. And in socionics, these two types that are the NEFI type and the TISE type are actually called conflictor types. So what do you think? Are these two types about to conflict in this entire interview? Let's hope not, but without further ado, here is the rest of the interview.
Hi everyone, my name is Crystal and I'm an ENFP, and today I have the privilege of speaking to an ISTP. This is Jess. Hello, Jess.
Hi.
Yep. So basically, I think it's really interesting that on the internet there's not a lot of ENFP, ISTP interactions, and I don't really meet that many ISTPs in the type community. So I thought it'd be cool for us to do a video of us, I guess, maybe talking about the functions that, we don't share any, but maybe our perspectives on life because of that. So yeah. Anyways, so I actually have been super nerdy about trying to meet more ISTPs lately because I don't have TI or SE in my stack, but I've been actually really working on developing my TI and my SE, and I've realized a lot of things that I wanted to actually run by you as someone whose entire world is TI. So a big thing for me is, I feel like a lot of discussions on the internet with typology talk about how, there's this FI and FE, clash of, oh, FI can be, so selfish, and, FE is, overly giving. And I was thinking about how the quality of FI is it's an introverted function, and the quality of FE is it's an extroverted function. And in a sense, FI, introverted feeling, can exist in a vacuum. It doesn't need to, check with the objective, external, emotional world to feel something and stand by it. So I've been thinking about how introverted thinking also exists in a vacuum where it doesn't need the external objective facts to, conceive of a standard of truth. And I've been thinking about how I actually don't have that. And it's very easy for me to look at conflicting facts and very quickly become overwhelmed and have my brain short circuit and quit. So if someone liked me and I didn't like them back and I rejected them, I'd be like, it's too bad for you. But if someone told me or questioned my competence, I would immediately start questioning my entire existence. So I feel like it took a long time for me to obtain logical conviction on things. So I guess I was curious, Jess, if and when you started learning about typology, did you was it surprising to you to realize that people don't necessarily live with a sense of logical conviction, as I like to call TI?
Yeah, I think I kind of, especially when I was younger, in high school and stuff, I only understood myself, and I wasn't so good at talking to other people and understanding how they were different than me. And that came later. But I think I'll talk to someone and realize that they didn't think about it anywhere as close, anywhere near as much as I did, or sit through it at, with a fine-tooth comb. So I think I did go through a process of being surprised, and then I think I was introduced to typology when I was in college. So I think I was at the stage where I was learning how to talk to other people and get to know them. So I think it helped me filter that information in a logical way, actually.
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean by learning to talk to people? What does that mean exactly?
It more I like I said, I understood myself. And then I think if you don't really like try to see things from other people's perspective, you kind of think they're the same as you, or you just project. I mean, I think everyone still projects themselves onto everything they do, but I think you just do it more and more the less you like talk to a bunch of different people and like in an FE way, just really kind of like share in a community kind of thing. You're not a part of, you know, other people as much as maybe an FE Dom would be at that age. So
Yeah. Would you say you would have considered yourself like, or I mean, you still consider yourself like very like opinionated, like before you knew about typology?
yes. And and especially at that time when I was younger, people would say, like, try to talk to me about like a topic. It could be like politics, like anything. It could be anything. And they would be like, well, you've thought about this before. Like, you've thought about this a lot. And I was like, well, doesn't everybody? So,
Yeah,
but they don't.
that's so
Not everybody
interesting.
anyway.
Wait, so my NEFI brain is thinking about, I don't think I only recently, like in the last couple of years of my life, started having people be like, oh, you thought about this a lot. And I actually want to say that I know it's the last couple of years, because I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, yes, I have. Finally, someone gives me credit for it, because I wasn't really doing that before. So it's interesting, because I'm feeling myself feel like my emotional reaction to, wow, you really thought about this, is like a huge sense of pride. Like, that's right. I cut through all this crap to think about something, because it's genuinely like really hard. So I think that's so interesting. Because so my like little hero's journey was that when I was younger, I was very introverted, but I like, it's like this thing where I knew I wasn't naturally an introvert. I just felt very like trapped in that, like I had this whole like imagination thing, and like I didn't want to play on the bark chips or something, right? And like be in the external world. And like the problem was that when you're a kid, no one else necessarily who like isn't also an intuitive dom wants to like indulge you like playing house, or not even playing house, like playing castle. Like, what is a castle? You know? So it wasn't even like I was using anything, the extroverted sensing, to like relate to people. So it was like pretty lonely growing up. And then I think when I got older, like I noticed, like I didn't also know how to actually connect with people very, like unless they were also kind of angsty with introverted feeling, I wouldn't really know how to talk to them either. Like people be like, oh, you're so like outgoing and so charming, and I'm like, yeah, but then people like leave because they think I'm kind of narcissistic. So it's interesting, because I actually think that if I were to dig into my opinion of myself, for a long time I thought I was like kind of stupid and also kind of socially awkward, but in a way where no one was catching on to just how bad I felt about those things. So I don't know if you've seen the videos where I talk about the fact that when I learned typology, I never doubted that I was an ENFP, because I started with socionics with Meghan, with the ENFJ, and the first thing I knew, the first function that I could feel myself attached to, was the conviction that I do not have introverted thinking. Before I knew what I had, I knew what I didn't have. I was like, wait a minute, this is an archive of every single logical conclusion that someone has made that imprints on them, and so they can figure things out without having to reference instructions. Wait, that explains literally all the problems I've had since I was a kid. And so you have to understand that I'm like one of those ENFPs who like worships introverted thinking. Like, I'm just like, what? You mean to tell me that you could just like sit there and figure something out and think about it and have a new organic insight? Can't relate. For me, I'm like always remixing things like a DJ. Yeah, like it's like I grew up with an ISFJ mom who like really enjoys her introverted thinking like a lot, and so she would like kind of like she would question me like, why aren't you getting this? And she would legitimately like want to know. But extroverted thinking takes those questions and thinks they're like rhetorical, like passive aggressive, like you're stupid, why don't you get this? Oh, because you're stupid. Like we hear it as a closed loop. So for years I would just be like, if only I had some magic ingredient that everyone else has. Oh wait, it's having an opinion about things and being able to figure things out without asking other people. And I think it's interesting because like as I've gotten to know more people who have introverted thinking, especially TPs, they're like, you should stop idealizing it, because at the same time, we don't really know how to be like blunt and to the point. So like, I guess me trying to loop that back and like loop you in the conversation and like, have you ever had difficulty with, say, like extroverted thinkers just kind of beating down on like your introverted thinking, questioning, and being able to figure things out? Like, like, how did you feel about that, I guess?
Yes, I have like, I don't know, in lots of places that I've worked, like I've worked for like extrovert thinkers type people, and like
There's a lot of them.
yes, especially in like if they're going to be your boss or whatever. I think that's
yeah, like seriously, yeah.
a common position for them to have. So, but yeah, and they'll kind of have their own ideas about how to do it, and as long as somebody like kind of agrees with them and they have like their own little community where they all agree on the same type of thing, and you kind of come in and you don't really like agree with that, or you have a different way of doing things that like at first, then they're going to be like, okay, my way is how it is, everybody else agrees with me and you're the odd one out, like, and you're wrong. And for me it's like, well, it doesn't matter how many people, like there's that like saying where it's like 1,000 people can't be wrong or whatever it is, and it's like, well, yes they can.
Wow, I've never heard that. Wow, I've never heard that, but that does sound like a loaded statement. Holy shit. Yeah. Do you feel like okay, what is it like when an extrovert thinker says something that your introverted thinking like disagrees with? Is it like a grating, like cognitive dissonance starts screaming in your brain? Like, what is that like, I guess?
It Yeah, it can be, but it's more like, I mean, I'll consider anything. So I'll consider it at first, and I can spend a lot, like, because I have extroverted sensing, like I'll like be like, well, that sounds like a really like a bad idea, and then but try it anyway.
Wow, that's so interesting. I feel like sometimes I'm like, yeah, they said that, and regurgitate like an entire conversation or statement, and people are like, what do you think about that? I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice. I don't know what I think. Like I can say exact words and have no attachment to what those words I'm saying are. So I can like blatantly lie almost and not even like be paying attention to that or something. Like, yeah, is that weird to you?
Well, do you feel like because it's not necessarily your strongest function, it is lying, or do you feel like you're trying to make FI like into something else?
Yeah,
It's not.
I feel like it's just kind of like, if I'm being really honest, like I'm calling myself out, I'm just like, do whatever it takes to make them think you're smart and get them off your back. Like it's like that. Like I'm just like, my goal is to look smart, look smart, look smart, look smart, look smart, look smart. Like I'm not even thinking about why my goal is that. It's just like and look like, and it's like I don't check in with if I agree with someone or not. I just go, here's a fact to add to whatever that person said and make them think I'm interacting with what they're saying, but I'm actually not. So, funny because like I say it that way now because I know the functions, but like I didn't even know I got better at doing that after I learned what the functions are. And I was like, I can be sneaky because now I know that I'm just really insecure. Like I hate feeling that way. Yeah, because it's like so I used to be a political reporter. Yeah, like my history, okay, sorry. Any little any traffic jam where I'm like, I could go on 5 different tangents, and right now you're witnessing in real time. You consider which one I should go down. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go down the one that I just started. So all the other ones. Okay, but anyways, so I did political reporting for a bit, like a couple years ago, and I was like, I was covering the midterm in a conservative part of LA County, and so like there were a bunch of like liberals like trying to flip the state or flip the district into from red to blue. It was historically conservative. So I remember like I was interviewing like the new like young liberal Democratic candidate versus like the older conservative candidate. And like I was just so good at like being like, oh, hello, Mr. Steve, like how are your kids? And like just like being like, oh yeah, like I can see why like people who want to own guns are actually thinking about blah blah blah. Like yeah, and then like I can see why people that think like a woman's choice is like abortion think blah blah blah. Like yeah, and it's like I just sum up what people are like saying. And in journalism, it's so easy. You just go okay, fact. Here, someone else decide what that means.
You're just repeating what they said.
Yeah, like I was like, it's like
paraphrased.
Yeah, like I was like a stenographer. I was just spitting out like facts, and I was like, wow, I am doing the world such a service by letting them know what those people are even saying, so then they can go and have opinions about it. But I was the one that brought them, like, whatever. So I wasn't even like judging like the social impact of like, you know, whatever that is. So I think that when things got messier, right, after last election, was when I started experiencing more, I guess, cognitive dissonance, because I was like, am I really, like, if I'm not part of like this solution of like getting people toward a truth, so to speak, and if I'm always, quote, in the middle of like, oh, well, these facts that people can agree on are people should be respected, that's a fact, but what does that mean? I don't want to go deeper into that. Like, it's so hard sometimes to like, it basically makes me feel like a sheeple or like a pushover almost. And like, I know those are kind of maybe strong ways to describe it, but like, I do think that that is an issue that is pervasive when you can kind of get away in society with like not having an opinion on things. And like, I just thought about this like a lot over the last few years, because like now my ideal career path is like teaching people like how to like read tarot cards, like law of attraction stuff. And like, it feels very like polarizing for me to come out as like a spiritual person or as someone who does have opinions about politics and things. I've always had them for a long time, but like verbalizing them is like terrifying, because I'm like, do I even believe what I'm saying? Because if someone questioned that with an opposing fact, I have gathered enough facts about those topics in my life to have a rebuttal that I can regurgitate. But if they volunteered like another nuanced thing like aliens in politics, suddenly I'd be like for broke. I'd be like, fuck, like I don't know what to say to that. And I think I live in fear of like being caught off guard by like having to form my own truth like on the fly. Like that's what really sucks.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess that was like monologuing, but you can respond, I guess.
Do you think being like a journalist made you, I mean, sometimes like if I read some type of journalism, sometimes it'll be like the whole first paragraph is telling you like how they're biased, and then they go and they write their bias, like whatever they're critiquing or whatever like they're doing. So do you feel like it makes you like, it's better if you do take a stance as far as like maybe who you're working for, if you're getting like published somewhere, if you align with that, or like,
wow, this is juicy actually, because like, okay, so my NT is like, oh yeah, there's so much to unpack. Okay, so basically, I you have to understand my background was investigative print journalism. So I've worked for like the newspapers that are definitely dying now. But yeah, like for example, the Indianapolis Star, the Minneapolis Star Tribune, and a few articles for the Washington Post that were just like covering school shootings, because those are a thing that one can plurally say they've covered now. And like the Trump hotels and what they're like. So it was like really like, we're literally just saying like what happens in the community and all these things, versus I'm realizing that for a lot of people now, the perception of journalism is not just the newspapers, but also like sometimes even like blogs that have been packaged and purposed into, we deliver this type of news and that is still journalism because we're still giving people information but with a bias or slant. I feel like I somehow like went the entire 4 years of school and then like a couple years after, like with interning and stuff, like somehow having the most literal, like the oldest, like Casey went to school and Casey shot like up a school and that's it. Like there's no like opinion in it almost, but there is like more opinion journalism now in this day and age. And I guess like I'm actually realizing that what you are kind of referring to is what made me kind of shift. I think it was like me perceiving that like, well, you know, it seems like you're gonna have to take a stance no matter what, because journalism is now so defined differently than just newspapers telling you what's going on in the community and who won city council. Now it's like, let's unpack what that is. Let's unpack all these things. And there's so many liberal ways, conservative ways, socialist ways, or I don't even know, like anarchy ways to do that. And so I'm just like, wow, it seems like I just kind of left early, and I probably would have had to take a stance anyway, even if I'd stayed in journalism, because like I would have probably went where the money was for journalism, and that's having a slant on things, but packaging it as objective or something. So that's really interesting actually, because I'm just like, I wasn't even paying attention to the trajectory that I thought I'm just too weak to do journalism, as opposed to noticing, well, journalism is also changing, so I changed with it. Whoa. So I think that's also actually That's actually interesting because that's also what I attribute to SE and NI. Because my NE and SI, you know, like it's like as an NP, people don't notice how we are kind of suckers for tradition, but our version of tradition. So I'm not even paying attention to what's shifting in the intuition of the world. I'm just like, well, I know that I went to school for this and I was promised this and I deviated from that promise, as opposed to, well, that promise expired. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's more like a contract. Like, I don't, you know, you went to school, you did, you know, you checked all the points to be able to do that. And now that you're not really,
Now that I'm not
checking
doing it,
off all this anymore.
now that I'm not doing it, I attribute it to I failed. Like, I don't think that society changed. I think I just couldn't finish what I started. It is all me. It's like, oh, like, yeah, it's all me. Like, it's like, it's very interesting because we can like numb out, I guess, those changes. And an SE user would be like, look, the sky is no longer blue, it's green. I'm like, maybe I'm just, and then it's like for NE, we can like almost gaslight ourselves into like not believe like what's going on. Like, we're just like, all I know is I'm always changing, but the world's also changing. It's like, that's something I find myself, especially without TI, coming back to again and again. Because I'm like, my standard of truth changed, but that just means that I'm just weird or something. Versus like when people are like, no, like people naturally change their opinions when new information comes in. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's what I did. So it's like funny because like I'm still experiencing what SE and TI would say is normal, but it's foreign like to me. So my question to you would be, do you have any maybe parallels of like things that surprise you about your life that you would imagine an NFP be like, oh, that's normal? I mean, maybe that's too NE, but let me know. So
Yeah, it might be too NE, but like I don't know. I feel like they just, and he comes up with a lot of different things that I would never think of. Like I go backpacking with an ENTP, and I feel like I should write a book about it because it's hilarious. But she'll just be somewhere and she'll be like, you know, she'll like, we'll hear fireworks and she'll be like, can you imagine in some other countries like these are bombs going off, what it would be like to live there? And I'm like, I would have never thought of that.
I want to hike with the ENTP. That sounds so fun.
We'll be like walking through the woods and she's like, can't you just imagine there are fairies in here? And I'm like, no.
No, it's actually
no offense to anyone who sees fairies around, but like,
that's so funny because I went hiking with this ISFP once. Yeah, that's a whole story. But like basically I was the one that was like, hey, like, you know, I want to play this song that this environment makes me think of. And he was like, this environment makes you think of something? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm like going through the woods and the soundtrack begins to play, and it's this song on Spotify, and it's like an alt J like indie rock song, or indie pop song. He's like, interesting. And then I was like, yeah, like, do you feel like this vibe just makes me think about how like in society when we have to create forests within the forest here reflect, I don't know, like something like that, right? Like it was like, and then I was like I asked him, I was like, do you feel like you like react more to your environment, or do you think you try to create an environment? He's like, I aspire to create an environment. And like, and then he was like listening to the song I played and it was like kind of woodsy, kind of fantasy feeling. He's like, I don't even think you created this. I feel like this song actually fits with what I'm seeing right now, weirdly. And I'm like, yeah, like the environment made this song come up in my head. And he was like, I don't think my brain does that. And I was like, this is what it's like to not have NE. What is going through your head? He's like, I'm just feeling the breeze. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a breeze. Like I was like, I was too busy being like, wow, this song is so loud in my head that I am now tuned out everything else about what's going on.
So do you feel like it all like inspires what, like you picking that song, but you don't really even realize like the original inspiration for it?
Oh, wait, that's exactly what happened. Yes. Like I was like, next thing I knew, I was like staring out at the wind, listening to the song, and it's like, but this is why it's like, I didn't think of the why I was listening. I'm like, suddenly I just felt compelled to listen to this song, and what a perfect compliment or something. Like I don't think of it as the origin was the environment. I just think, wow, look at my brain doing cool things or something. So that's really interesting. Like, what are you thinking about or experiencing when you're in the SE like that? Are you just like are you thinking any thoughts or something? I don't know.
I think I am taking in like the information, like all the stuff that you said that you don't notice, but that was like your inspiration for that. Like that's all the stuff I'm paying attention to, and like how it's changing like every second or whatever. But I won't be like, oh yeah, this reminds me of like this song, or this fits the moment perfectly. Like I don't have any
That's
of
so
those.
NE.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel like SPs just quietly enjoy. Like for me, even if I was alone, I'd have to be like looks at the fourth wall camera. Like, you know, sometimes when we're in these nature environments, we just go like it's like I'd have to like make it into like a vlog moment, even if no one's gonna watch this vlog. I'd have to like narrate it somehow. And I realized that I don't think SPs have to narrate things to enjoy them. Like
No, that's another thing. Like I don't do the fourth wall thing, because if you do, you're kind of like, you're not in the flow anymore. Like you have to like press pause and be in your fourth wall, kind of talking to the camera. And
oh yeah. Wait,
if you
did you ever
do that,
yeah. Oh wait, keep going.
then it kind of stops you from, like, you can't react if it's not moving anymore. You can't stand still and do it like that.
Oh, yeah, like
Kind of.
if you paused in fourth wall, then like a frisbee came out of nowhere and hit you in the face, like shit. Like
Yeah.
SE would never let that happen. That's so interesting.
Then you're NI.
Like and I paid. Wait, did you ever watch The Office? Like The Office?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I've
like
seen it before, but I haven't watched it in a long time.
yeah, but like it's like just the format of like a mockumentary where like people they're like panning and then people look at the camera like what?
Yeah.
And they have an interview of them being like, nah, 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 nah. Like to me, I feel like I always do the freeze frame. You may be wondering what I'm thinking right now. Well, let me tell you. And it's like no one was probably wondering, but I feel like unless I like pause and like annotate and footnote every single second of my life, I'll like lose track of what I'm experiencing or something.
Do you
So
feel like it's like telling yourself that, like you're writing your own book, kind of, or like?
yes, it is to me. It is to me. It's rhetorical. Like literally, I actually don't even like want people to like find my journals where I had to scribble things like neurotically every like hour of my life just to make sure I'm like it's like almost like I'm capturing a record of life. It's like I experienced life through like a linear record, which is what I attribute to my intuitive sensing. If I can't remember it, did it even happen? Like I have this huge like chip on my shoulder about like if I ever got Alzheimer's, I'd like fucking lose it. I'd be like, dude, oh my god, like am I even real? If no one else is born witness to these memories are being lost every day, my brain just like I think SE doesn't have the same fear because it just yeah like like what is your reaction to like this strange neuroticism? Because I don't think it's actually just me that has this. It's NESI.
No, and I think I don't know if I necessarily notice it, because like for me, I just kind of collapse like all of like the information into like bullet points, or like this is the priority, or this is what's important. Like so I don't even remember like this, like the really detailed parts of my memory. I just remember like I remember this pattern that happened, and that's it.
Wow, wait. So can you just like boil down, bam, singular truth? Like
Yeah,
that?
and that's the only thing I'll remember. And maybe like
Wow.
if I have to explain it to somebody, I'll remember like one example or two examples, but like every time I'll just come up with a different example and not remember 50 others that happened to me that would make it more valid. I don't ever remember that.
Yeah. You know, before so I have an ISFP father, and I think that one of the big things about like my childhood was like feeling very at odds between having an ISFJ mother and an ISFP father who like cannot be more different, but also weirdly similar because of that like ISF like energy of like wanting to like have a good sensory, emotionally fulfilled life, and like neither succeeds. But like I feel like what really got me about him and when I started noticing the SC and I users in my life was that I would worry that if they forgot like a detail about me, would they even remember me?
Oh.
Like it's like very I don't know, like I get so offended sometimes when like Megan, who you know has an ISE, or like the ISFP, or like any of the people in my life forget a singular thing about me, because to me I'm like my essence is in every detail. If you forget one detail, do you even know my essence anymore? Like I think that's like a neurotic fear that I have as an NE and SI user. And then like these SE and NI users, especially if they know type, are like no, because I remember the takeaway and the person you are themselves is what's important. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know, like what your response like that is, but I definitely have this like, it's like this idea that like my life is a puzzle, and if one piece is missing, the puzzle is ugly and useless, and throw the whole damn puzzle out. Like that's how I see it. So yeah.
I have noticed that, where if you don't remember a detail, or even if, say, they're there for a conversation with somebody else and you leave out a detail, like maybe even that they were there, but it's like, well, I'm not going to turn to you and be like, but you were there, right? Because they know that. Like, they'll get offended. Like, they'll be mad.
Did you forget about me? Like, any NSI is so freaking controlling about that. We're like, like, yeah, it's really good to know that you like notice that too. Like, does that bother you? I mean, I realize I ask very FI questions of like, hey, what are your emotions about that? Or I guess, what is your logical conclusion about like that, I guess?
No, I don't know how logical it is, but it's kind of just, well, I almost don't validate it, which is bad, but like, I'm like, well, I don't know why you would be offended by that, something small, it doesn't, it doesn't mean anything to me, so I have a hard time seeing how it means something to them. Or like, they'll notice like little things that I would never even think of, and then just be like, that might change their mind about like whether you're really friends or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's like so on point. Yeah. Like, so you know how you said if you're in your journal, you write one singular truth and yeah. Like, to me, my like, not like critique, but like my anxiety that I feel spark up thinking about that is like, but what if you didn't have all the right information, and what if that conclusion intuitively is actually incorrect then, or something? Like, I was like, that would like trip me out so hard to like narrow down all my experiences of like this one instance into a singular, like, not just, and I've also that kind of truth. I'm like, but like, I don't know if I have enough information. So like, that would like really like bug me out. But I think that like ICPs are really good at like living their lives very, like, it's like if you didn't have takeaways about things, you couldn't like fix any cars or tame any horses or do any of those things in the real world. So it definitely works. That's why it's like, can't reconcile what that's like, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a real question, like a good question. You kind of constantly have to be taking in new information to like vet it a little bit. Like, if you don't have SE developed very good, or you don't do much of it at all, I'm sure that can be a problem.
Yeah.
But I think like the more I do it, or as I get older, I get better at like trying to make another opportunity happen. Like how you said you try to like make experiences. I don't know that I necessarily do that. I kind of like get in the flow with it, like match up with it and go with it. And I know like Annie says the same thing, like go with the flow and stuff, but I don't know how to differentiate it really, or the right words to say. Yeah. But it is a different like go with the flow.
Okay.
So
Yes. What I actually have noticed, and I'm holding this like eyeshadow brush now to like really feel smart, and I'm like, this point is important. But basically, so most of my exposure to like NI and TI for a long, long time was just through NFJs, and I would just be like, kind of, I guess I got kind of used to like trying to over-explain myself to make sure that like they would give a shit about like, sometimes if they don't like any NFI, they're like, you're so long-winded. But I actually feel like a lot of STPs I've met are actually better at being curious to like what I'm even saying, if say we're both interested in the same topic, and also catching on faster to like, if they don't quite get what I mean, they can like use like their SE and TI to act, because like it's like they can like basically finish my sentence or like catch on to some semblance, be in the ballpark of what I mean. And so I've attributed this to the fact that my lower, weaker functions are SI and TE, and that's probably what I have trouble expressing, but it's there supporting the NEFI, and so an STP can like technically just tap into their like shadow or something and kind of see the same picture. And because we're all P's here, we're very aware of an extroverted perceiving that's very fluid and an introverted judging that's very like convicted. So it's actually interesting because I do feel like sometimes STPs almost help me more, or like give me the benefit of the doubt that that's just how I am, and like don't like go, what do you mean by that? The way FJs will just like not quite catch on. So I think that's actually really interesting, because I do think that regardless of your functions, if you're a P, you catch on to flows that are going on at once. So like that's like what I've realized. It's like SPs can actually fill in the blanks that I can't. So to go back to the example of like you having that one takeaway, for me, I can write pages and pages and pages of conversation. I can like do like a word for word, but I won't remember at all like what it means, or not even remember, because in the moment I won't even know what it means either. So I'll never conclude what it means. That's actually very stressful for me. So it'll feel like my brain's on like a freaking loop, like this broken record. It reminds me also, sorry, that's one analogy. The other analogy is that I don't know if you've ever seen those YouTube trailers of like movies where they turn, say, like The Sixth Sense into like a romantic comedy by just changing the music. And so basically to experience NE and SI is to always have like the footage from like a movie without the audio. And not having NI means that you can sub out interpretations, aka audios, and you will always just be like, which one is it? Is this a happy story? Is this a sad story? Is this a story? And I was like, well, I can't remember what the footage is, but I can like kind of hear the dialogue and conclude, oh yeah, it's a scary movie. Like, yeah. So that is an analogy I'd love for you to respond to, actually, because I think that was what I was working up towards. So yeah.
That's a really good way to say it. Like, I have noticed the same thing where any kind of like they kind of get what I'm talking about, because I think like say if it's tarot or if it's anything that they're into and they get the concepts of it and you're talking about something else, if they can like kind of use what they've taken away from that to understand something else, I think they kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. And then they also like, it's really easy for them to not look like they're new at something.
Yeah.
Like, I think that I think that if you lean too much on it, you can never be like great at something, but they're just very good at when they first start. They kind of have the concepts from somewhere else and can like bring it to whatever they're doing now.
Yes, and like you can use a personal experience you have, even with TI, to like relate yourself to me in an ideas way, which I think is really cool. But yeah.
And I have noticed, like, I have a friend, any friend who are like, she likes to paint, and so she understands like all the concepts of art and like painting and stuff like that. And then she can take it and like has never done makeup before, but she can take that, and she doesn't know how to use the medium. Like, she might not know how to use cream or powder or brushes, but she knows like the general like art part of it. So she just has to have the extra.
Yeah.
I see it as SE, but
wait. Sorry, I have another analogy. It's funny because sometimes I'll be sitting here and an analogy will pop in. I'm like, that's so hyper specific. Like, I don't even know where, like the YouTube trailer, when I came up with that the other day, I was like, I only saw one of those YouTube trailers once, but I was just like, oh, this is like a thing. It's like I index everything for like use for a future metaphor. Like every single thing I ever experienced is just, here's the intuitive meaning, guys. So, okay, so something I wanted to actually mention was, so SE users, I feel like, even if they're not like professional chefs or even like cooking that much, if they're sort of trying to cook something that they like ate at a restaurant, and like they'll basically be like, oh, well, this meal's made up of XYZ, and this is a spice, and this is a spice. So if I just sub in this spice, it'll probably turn out similar. If not, like it's just gonna be like, it's like basically, I feel like SE can kind of look at like physical ingredients and kind of track their similarities in food or something, versus for me with bad SE and having a lot of like weird baggage around cooking because of my Asian culture where like I was really bad at it growing up, like if I see a recipe online and I'm missing one ingredient, I will be so paralyzed about trying to find a substitute, even if I have like a kitchen full of things. And everyone with SE that I know is all like, oh, just use this. And I'm like, how do I, wait, what? And they're like, oh, this has this kind of ingredient component, so therefore you can maybe use it because the whole point of this meal having that is for XYZ purpose. And I'm like, say that again? Like it's like so interesting because like to me I paralleled like, oh, these people can see the physical makeup of things, like, or whatever. Same with like clothes or something. Like if I'm like, oh no, is this outfit still gonna work if I wear shorts instead of pants? And it's like, well, every outfit has a bottom, so just put a bottom on. And I'm like, but it has to be this hyper specific bottom, like on this hyper specific picture, or it doesn't work. Or it's like I am unwilling to experiment in that regard.
Yeah, I think like I'm not big on cooking either, but I do like I'll be like, well, this is just like this other ingredient.
Yeah, this is like
And
this.
whatever.
Yeah, like physically,
Yeah.
you like notice things are similar, and I'm like, they all exist in their own vacuum. What are you talking about? So
Yeah, as long as I have like the same shared concept, I'll be like, well, this is not the same, but kind of the same.
yeah, well, when you say shared concept, that's so interesting because that's so like SE and NI. Because to me, I'm like, every physical thingy is so separate. It has a very specific, separate like box it must be in. So like, if I have dark, even down to like this like recipe calls for like soy sauce, and I have dark soy sauce, I'll spend forever being like, but like dark soy sauce, they only use in some things. So can I use dark soy sauce? But it's still soy sauce, right? The name is soy sauce, but like the texture is like different. Like I'll just spin on and on and on. Like literally, and people are like, why are you so neurotic about this? Because I'm like, I want to get the exact taste, or if I don't get the exact taste, I want to like not have something bad. And it's like
Oh wow.
so intense for me, like to be like that.
All or nothing.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because like, and that to how your friend that like isn't any user, but say paints, and then they like do something like with makeup. Like it's interesting because it's like you have to be very, very familiar with like one specific medium to be like intuitively like this is this. Like for me, I'm like, oh, like when I was observing the YouTube trailers without music, the intuitive idea of like what that accomplishes, that end result, I can then tie to other things that accomplish a similar intuitive end result. So it's like to me, I'm like, oh, it's like the component is like footage or something, but without a key component to give it meaning, therefore creates dissonance. Therefore, I think of the footage in my head minus the intuitive meaning also creates dissonance. Therefore, these two are related, and that's how you create a metaphor. So it's like, I always think of like, what did someone intuitively experience after like XYZ thing I saw? And so from there, it's almost like I have the intuitive like hypothesis, and then I just build like ways to like plug it in. Like it's like almost like creating like a little algorithm in my head of like different ways. I don't know. This sounds really complex, but I hope you understand. It's like this sounds really convoluted out
I
loud.
understand. Like I'm more like it's more likely that I'll use like an analogy, but I'll use an analogy. I'm like, this thing and this thing are the same. Like they mean the same thing. They have the same like however many points I needed to prove that they were the same. And so if another, saying it in an analogy helps somebody else get it, then yeah, but I'm not necessarily adding to it. I'm just taking what's there and then taking the pieces that match up.
Yes. No, I have like an ESTP friend who uses those kind of analogies, like, but he like does it as like a way of teaching like a life lesson as opposed to explaining more of like what something like an object like is. Like he'll be like, oh, this like in like he's really familiar with sports. He'll be like, oh, like in what was it? Like something like, oh, like in football, like at the last minute, at the last seconds when like the pressure is on or something, and you like have to throw it. There's always this point at which you have to like be okay with whatever happens, and that's like life or something. Like he'll take like the essence of like two unrelated things and explain it. Versus I'm like, these two animate objects have a similar intuitive result of like why people behave this way, as opposed to like this is a lesson for you to take home to not be afraid to strike out or something like that. Like I'm just like, okay, there's no real takeaway for like me explaining how the NE brain works, but it's like if someone cared about understanding it more, hear more like details to like contextualize. Like do you feel like it's easy? I feel like it's actually easier for STPs to follow what I'm saying when I do those things, because like even though like it's like you're not literally adding to it and like taking the metaphor further, but you'll have like a visceral reaction to like whether you understood that or whether that's useful, or just at least there'll be some interaction with that. That's what I've noticed.
I think like a lot of times NE and SE can just kind of run parallel to each other without realizing you're different. And so I think that's what, like, I just take it in, like, in the SE, like, oh, this is new information, like, and then I'll put it in and I kind of play with it where it's like, okay, this, you're still you're adding to, like, the information I have, but it's like, the SE is, like, the examples, or, like, say you have, I always explain it like colors, like, okay, you have the color blue, but there's a bunch of other, like, expressions of the color blue, like, there's a bunch of different shades. So, but it's still all blue, and NI is blue.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Wait, I like how you did that. I feel like NFJ would do that. So yeah, it's actually interesting because I realized that so interactions like these actually over the years where I've noticed like, why are STPs like who are more different than me? Why are they like almost catching on and like adding to my brain stuff faster? Like NFJs validate me, but STPs actually make me rethink things when their NE is bad. What does that mean? So that actually made me conclude that like, oh yeah, because for me at least, I see all 8 of the functions in the pairs. So when someone says TI, I just think FE automatically. I'm like, can't separate them. So it makes me think about how at the root, to create comparisons and analogies and metaphors, you have to have like pretty decent like SI, always be like on your feet to like create those connections is what I realized. Because without it, you're like, what details about what I've seen before kind of contextually relate to what this person's saying? Because all my NE blabber is tied back to like introverted sensing, and like I have this introverted intuition shadow. And for you, it's like, oh, I can access both too to kind of like play and stuff. So for me, I'm like, oh, cool. So as long as we're like, I realize that as long as we have the same like intention to like observe the world, period, or like similar experiences, like I don't know, like being people who are into typology, it's like, oh, like we'll probably be able to like have some cool conversations versus if it's an STP like baseball player dude who doesn't care about like observing this, I'm like, okay, like, you know, so that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think like say in your instance where you said your SE friend was kind of like, you know, this is what happened and this is the moral of the story and why you need to be like this and like that's just very like it's very SE heavy where you're like, this is the expression of whatever the NI is. But I think if you have that connected to your NI, then like any SI will be able to kind of transfer it and flip it a little bit for themselves.
Yeah.
So I guess we're still translating, but it's
it's
get the gist of it.
I love that. Yeah, because I'm just like, yeah, ball, like whatever. And he's just like, but look at the meaning of what they learn. I'm like, oh yeah, they do learn things. Like I forgot they do that. Like, like I'm like, oh yeah. So okay. Another actually thing I wanted to mention is like, you probably never watched this, but basically I have a huge crush on this ISFP. And what I've kind of noticed though is like, in a sense, even if I'm hard to follow in any way, I've learned from observing this person that ISPs are actually like very, very intentional in a way that I actually think is very different than being an SE Dom, like an ESP. Like a lot of ISPs on the internet test as like an INJ or something. Like ISFPs are always mistyped as like INFJs. I don't really know what the experience is for like ISTPs, but I was thinking about how having NI tertiary makes you come off so differently than someone with NI inferior. So I would love to know your, I guess, thoughts about like how you live your life, because obviously if you have NI tertiary, you lead with a judging function introvertedly, whether you're ISFP or ISTP. But like, what is your experience with like observing like your level of mastery of your introverted intuition compared to say the NJs versus the ESPs who just like how do you feel about, I guess, being neither? Like what is that like, I guess?
I don't know. I mean, since I don't know how to be either of those, I don't know how it's like to be
wow, that's a very
either,
response.
But I do like, especially when you're younger, it's very like TI and I together, and they just like play back and forth together really like really strong. But I feel like I use it all the time, but I'm not necessarily comfortable with like whatever conclusions I do come up with. So I'll be like, I'll tell someone, like I still do the SE thing where I like tell you everything that happened, and like there could be someone who has stronger NI than me that I'll be like, that guy's a jerk. And to me, I'm like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Like that could, you know, who knows what happened there, or even if, like you said, you pointed out before, if you were right or wrong.
What do you mean by that doesn't mean anything? Like, I guess what is? I guess I'm kind of like.
It has so many options of what it could mean that I don't have anything to go off of, like how to figure out what the actual like saying zero in on what it actually means to you.
Like saying like that guy is a jerk doesn't actually add context for you to like live your life better. Oh, it's so interesting.
So for me, I'll go and I'll say to somebody like that has stronger NI than me, I'll be like, well, this happened and this happened and this happened, and then they'll look at me for a while and be like, so you mean they're a jerk? And I'm like, yeah, it's what I said.
Interesting, because like
So,
I feel. Do you think you're averse to like platitudes then, or like?
um, maybe not necessarily. I mean, I'd like to say I am, but not really. It's more so just how you're expressing something. Like if I don't know if it's like coupled with FE or not, but just like
Mhm.
giving something without context or without SE. Like if I can't see, like I need to be able to do my own, like, and I need to find the pattern. So like if someone doesn't tell me like they're a jerk because of these reasons, that's fine. That's like also your judging functions telling you like what that person values, but
Hmm. That's
I
so
don't.
interesting. Sorry, I'm just like so fascinated.
No,
And suddenly, I'm like, oh, wow. No, because like I guess I'm like, oh, I would have thought that because you have higher up introverted like judging that you would like make a conclusion or something. I don't know if that's maybe because the person saying that person's a jerk is very FI, so maybe you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. But like, I guess I just find it so interesting because I'm like, it's so interesting how it's such an absolute statement to where you are so introverted judging that you are judging how to use that almost. It's like it's something I actually don't see NJs actually even do. And I'm how are you tying that to I guess having higher an I like the point or something?
um I think, well, actually, like you said, how like you're judging on like how you find it. It's not so much like whatever you said or whatever the fact is. It's like, okay, now I have to sift through it and figure out like how and why and all the little details of it. And that's having TI stronger than NI. And I think NI over TI, it's like it's not necessarily, I don't know if they do the same thing or if one is,
Uh-huh. No, it's okay. I was like kind of almost rhetorically asking because I'm just like, dude, that I guess like so what happens is sometimes something will happen and I'll observe it and I'll intuitively be like something just clicked, but I have no idea what. So I almost have to like intuitively start blah blah blahing to like mess around and see what it is. Cause it's just like, cause I guess like okay, so
I
my yeah,
actually,
go ahead.
as I say, I actually kind of do that with TI, and I'm not sure if it's like NI helping it or not, but I'll do that. I'll like have a bunch of questions, which is basically like um, trying to figure out the how and why, and then I can go through and like answer my own questions if I think about it long enough. But it's almost like
Mm,
it starts off as like an initial reaction to where like say you're listening to someone like play piano and then you hear like a note that's out of key and it's just like that snap, like that's wrong, but I don't have like I can't explain it, but if I
mm.
just focus in on it and explain it, then I have all the answers to it. Like I have to take the time to think about it, but I have them
What
on
I
my
guess
own.
what motivates you to like hone in more on it then? Like
If I care about it, it could be anything, like whether it's interesting, whether it's something that I have to deal with in real life, and it could be anything.
dude, I really like that because actually that describes a lot of hypotheses I've had about NI, like hearing a note that's off and not quite like understanding it. Huh, that's so interesting. Yeah, because like, oh, and I feel like I actually had never really heard ESPs describe like their introvert intuition experience like that. Because like, I feel like for ISPs, it's maybe because the perceiving functions are in the middle and they're always kind of like bouncing each other out. But it's like
Hmm.
you take an SE, but what's the NI about it? And then it's like shuffling it almost seems.
Do you ever
Damn.
feel like you can't follow like the SENI, or do you think that's just in anything where you guys bounce around too much for us?
I feel like I feel like I don't know how to follow it. Like I'm very like not good at it, but I think it took learning the functions to notice times not following. Cause like yeah, and like I think I also am more sensitive to noticing when other people aren't following me because they'll just stop talking or like or they'll take a long time and I'll be afraid they don't and then they say something I'm like, oh okay, wait, but that yeah, and also something I want to say is like when you mentioned questions, I feel like SE and NI. So what I've learned from being around ISPs is they have so many really good questions, but then I think it gives them anxiety to not have answers, and so they don't want to necessarily go into the questions. Versus I'm the opposite, where I didn't even know how many answers I had until I hung out with a lot of NFJs who asked these questions. And I'm like, oh, it's this is this. And I'm like, how did I know that? And it's like, because I feel like, so I feel like I always ask like rhetorical questions unless I'm engaging with someone else's truth. To myself, I'm like, what is the point of all this? Oh, the point is blah. Like, it's like I won't even have the question until I already have the answer, and the question is just to pivot into the answer. So, like, for me, I don't relate to this idea of, like, having these questions and being unable to answer them and maybe getting anxiety from that. I don't know if you do, but I know the ISFP friend does. So, yeah.
I don't know if I do. Like, there's a certain, like, I'll be okay if I have possibilities to try, and then there's a certain point where you have to be like okay with like you don't know everything ever, and you just kind of have to go out and do it. Like you can research.
Ooh,
like
that's so SE. Like, yep, gotta use SE to find the answer.
yeah, like you can like if you're gonna buy something, you can research it as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's like it has to work for you. So you know you can get close or narrow it down a little bit, but you still have to go and like buy that, and maybe it still doesn't work, but then you have more information to like maybe make an even better choice the next time, and maybe you'll get it and not have to waste a ton of money with whatever you buy.
Well, have you ever tried to skip over? I mean, I'm sure you tried to, because it maybe happens to all of us with our auxiliary, but what is a time that maybe you tried to skip over like your SE and you're just TINIing or something?
I'm sure I've done it a lot, especially when I was younger, but I can't think of an example that
Sorry, so sorry. That's fine.
I don't know if I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I think you aren't doing something, you're just sitting there thinking about it. If you're not using the SE, you're just kind of like, okay, I know. And it's still all like serious.
Question. Is it like question? What is the answer? Oh, I don't have the answer. Yeah, that's I like, until you said that, I didn't even realize how often I only have questions once I have the answer. Otherwise I won't even think to question things, which has led,
that's interesting.
Yeah, which has honestly led to me like just probably being like more reckless about like zoning into like what I actually think about things, because I can just go on autopilot and just live a life that's not examined. Live a life unexamined. Yeah,
so is that SI where you're just recalling like some NE that you had earlier? Or?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And like it's funny because like again, I'm very used to my daily dose or hourly dose of like NISE from like NJs themselves. So NJs who reject SI compared to an SP who, you know, SPs don't like SI, but they at least are like, oh, that's a thing. Yeah, like NJs are like, what? I don't have any past drama or something. But like NJs, they'll be like, you're living in the past, you're stuck in the past. And they're like, you should only go to the past if you like are trying to make sure that something never happens again. And I'm like, well, that seems to be a lot to ask for from fate, because what if fate has a different idea? Like I was talking to Pokoki, the INFJ, about the idea that like as an ENFP, I've always felt like life is something that just happens to me. Like the idea that I could have control over that was something very recent as a breakthrough. Like I was just like, what? You mean to tell me that if I go into the past but don't drown in it, instead look at the entire narrative to see all the facts objectively, I can change my destiny? What? Like it's like before it'd be like I would like look to the past to know what was coming, like, and not participate in changing it. And yeah, like I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I definitely do. Like if I have a bad experience and I don't want to have it again, I'll kind of be like, okay, what, like, why did this happen? Well, you know, what led to it? And then if I start seeing it again in real life, I'm like, red flag. And so do you ever have red flags, or do you just not, you see them or you don't care, or you don't see them at all?
Oh God. So I'm sure you, actually, I'm not sure actually, I don't know anything, but like what I was gonna say is that I have these ideas about red flags where I focus too much on certain red flags and not enough on other red flags. So the concept of red flags is like, if an ENFP is like kind of in an unhealthy state of mind, they'll really just respond to their fears. So like if Megan says one kind of salty thing that reminds you of my mom, I'll be like, red flag, she's toxic just like my mom is, blah, blah, blah. And then bam, like I'll just slam the door faster than maybe I should. So it's like, you didn't really think that one through, Chris. It's like, oh, and no one ever calls me out on that except my new, like, you know, inner parent that I've like, yeah. But so there's that version of where I double down really fast on like red flags. that like I perceive versus actually like assessing if they're logically like correlated with the current situation. Because again, with bad SE, I don't really recognize, well, like I'm not 13 anymore. My mom's not like it's like this person isn't my mom. Not everyone's the same as your friends who ditched you in middle school. But like,
Okay.
I will just be so like, so what I do is I go into SI and I extract the behavior that made me feel bad, but I won't actually examine the logistics behind why those people did those things, how to track accurately what's happening now. I'll just be like, oh look, press a button. Yep, if anyone coughs, they have a disease and I must get away from it. Like, it's like that is like how like sensitive it is, right? So it's like, yeah, it's just very trigger happy, very just I'm triggered, therefore something evil's going on, or it's like the wrong conclusion about like what the past means, right? With bad NI and TI. So there's that. On the other hand, I won't take responsibility very well, which I think is honestly kind of lack of TI. Sometimes we'll be like, oh, like my circumstances, yeah, like whatever. And like I won't think about what part did I have to do in these unfortunate events in the SI that I will never stop replaying. So I will never look at the red flags of my behavior to also like look in the present of like, am I doing this thing again that like in the past got me in trouble? Like I won't pay attention to like my participation in my fate. So I think there's like extremes where I'm just doubling down super hard on the idea that things are circumstantial and all I can do is just swerve my way through life, like avoiding things, as opposed to actually charting my own course and getting stronger from the past. So yeah, it's like I observe the past without actually like I observe it without feeling rooted in the idea that things are different in the now. To me, I've actually been able to dissociate to where I can mistakenly forget that I live in LA now and that I'm 25 and I can go back to feeling like no one likes me because no one liked me when I was 13, and coming back to reality and being like, why friends now doesn't actually help. So that was a very long answer.
No, that explains a lot. And I'm the total opposite.
Exactly. Which is why I have so much to learn from like STPs, because there's this quote I like really abide by now, which is like, if fate means you to lose, give him a good try anyway. And like that really helped me because I was like, oh, you know what? I will wager that maybe even if fate like means me to like fucking just never get what I want, I'm gonna be convicted in the idea that I at least tried. Because for me with NFP, it's like, why should I try with fate if I'm just gonna lose? Why even invest all this emotional expectation? And it's like STP is like, because you're empowered and you have hands and like a body to go and do things.
Because you can.
Exactly. And so I feel like a critique that STPs and NFJs can have of us NFPs is that we are very disempowered and delusional about that disempowerment.
So do you I agree with that actually, or I do see them like that a lot of the time.
Yes. Yeah. And
But
now you see it's like this is why I'm giving you the secret ingredients.
Yeah, you are giving me the secret ingredient. So do you feel like you kind of have, instead of, you know, like since you don't take responsibility in one place, do you feel like, I don't know, that it kind of balances out somewhere else for you?
I freaking love STP questions. Well, okay, my responsibility that isn't in my own flesh and body, like, because I don't think of myself as having a body, my responsibility becomes in my eyes. Like, there's this, like, tweet that's like, I wish I could close my third eye as often as I close my own eyes or something. And I really resonate with that because I guess I feel like, especially because I became a tarot reader, that I have this implicit responsibility to predict everything. And the way I predict is not like how NI does, because sorry, analogies. So like I read somewhere once that like NI and SE can predict things when like say the stove is hot and then they're like, oh, something's about to like boil over. Like it's like when you're in the red, bam, it's like here, it's like about to spring out into reality. But I'm the kind of person where I can like predict from like further back. I can predict from further back like what's happening. It's almost like if NISE sees a fire or they feel the heat, they're like, there's a fire on the corner. But I can like smell a little bit of smoke and start to be like, there's a fire. Let me track how far away it is. Like it's like the smoke itself is like so subtle, but I can like do that. So how it works with tarot readings is basically I will like I will observe the conditions under which something can or can't happen based on what someone's experiencing. So it's like, okay, if this, then this is like a huge thing for me. If you choose your own adventure, I can like kind of look ahead and be like, if you do this thing, you must have this component within you to get what you want. If you want this thing, it's like, I'm just really good at remixing reality. So I think that I have this implicit obligation in my head to have my third eye like stretched to its limits, looking at everything possibly, like owning all the possibilities for everyone's parallel timelines, everything, so that if anything happens, I will never be surprised by it ever. Like I feel like I am an observer of my own fate, other people's fates, and I can like sound the alarm for, you should like go and do this thing before it's too late. I do that for other people really well, not myself, but like I feel like yeah, I guess you could say, oh my god, my SE is noticing. Okay, I guess you could say that like I just feel an implicit obligation to always be on my toes for what intuitive reality is going to come. Like for example, without getting too into it, this pandemic, I was like not really surprised necessarily that it literally happened this way, to where like I've like, okay, I'm not living my literal normal life, obviously, because we're stuck indoors, but like internally I feel pretty much the same as I did before. Like I'm just like, I still have boy problems, I still have to like work from home, I still have to do all these things. And like also with the last election, like whatever your politics are, T, like it's like I was interning in North Dakota a year before Trump got elected. So I was thinking, oh, like look at all these like farmers or people that like are about to lose their small town charters. I think they think that they want to change. So I actually can feel the sense that something big is happening for the next election. This is like unconventional. And so I'll have all these checkpoints set up. Like if this happens, then this means that this is more likely. So I guess because my like predictive abilities are now part of how I make money, and it's actually kind of fun for me, I guess my responsibility is always, I want to have this macro big picture view of everything. Like I feel like when they say an eye is about big picture, like an eye is about itself as a big picture, and then that big picture can translate to other people's big pictures. But I'm like, no, we are all just freaking pawns in this strange chess life, and I am the freaking like facilitator, the MC of all of it. I'm looking at all of it. So it's like for me, I guess I'm always like, I have to know and be able to like hypothesize what's going to happen and have all these hypotheses lined up for not just my life, but everyone's life. And I can just tap into it anytime. But it's really stressful for me then, because I'm always like neurotic about details then. Because if one detail changes, I'll be like, okay, I have to stop everything in my daily life, sit down, figure out what detail fits, redo the blueprint of reality, the algorithm for what's going to happen next. It's really exhausting, which is why like having tarot or astrology is actually very comforting to me, because it's like, oh, there's like a rhyme or reason to organize this, so I don't have to like start from scratch. So that was my long-winded answer to my responsibility is in this, not in this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if I ever like think of something like and any friend didn't, then they get very defensive and I'm like, well, I don't necessarily think that you didn't think about it. You just didn't need that piece of information to get done whatever you need to get done.
Oh, that's so nice of you. And I yeah, like I'm glad that you're like probably not too phased by them being defensive, because and E will just be like, why did I see that? What the fuck? And SE is like, we're all human, you can't see everything. I'm like, but yeah. I'm trying to transcend my mortality. You don't understand what it's like. So, but it is that. I guess like you could say like, I literally identify as a floating head. So when a guy is attracted to me before I even open my mouth, I'm like, why? My personality is so much greater than my looks. Like it's not even I think I'm ugly. It's just like I would think someone would only want to date or sleep with me if they heard that I am an oracle or something. Like it's like, I have a lot of intuitive weight on like being greater than just a man or something. Like it's kind of like this hero complex, like kind of an arrogant like seer or something. Like I'm a prophet and I can change everyone's life. If only I could change my own, like or some shit. Like, yeah, and
okay,
so
my phone is dying.
Oh no!
So I can plug it in, but the sound might go. The sound might be really bad. But
this conversation is going and going. I'm definitely gonna like cut it into multiple episodes. But yeah, so I guess like, wow, I like didn't even realize just how much take intuitive responsibility. And I think it's like, yeah, because if one puzzle piece shifts, everything's fucked. But I feel like SE is like, oh, if everything's fucked, we'll just roll the punches and create a new reality. I'm like, and it's like, I think SE is really grounding because of that, because they're like, it's not the end of the world that didn't happen. You can just do something else. I'm like,
You know, something that's interesting that I noticed, and I realize that it's biased towards me, but I feel like, I mean, obviously the responsibility that like SE and NE have is different. Like if I forget where I was talking to somebody about this, somewhere on the internet, but like it was like if you like they didn't get, or no, it was a friend that didn't get their permission slip signed to go on a field trip when they were young, and you know they go to get on the bus and they say no, and they, you know, they have all the, you know, it's NE having all the excuses are like why you should let them on. The bus driver still says no, and to me it's like, well, they said no, the answer is no, and they're mad because, and I think it has a lot to do with like the feedback that you're getting, and he expects that it can, I don't know if Essie's just like, okay, we can't change this, that's a brick wall, and like moves on to something.
Yeah.
And NE, I don't know what NE is doing, but I don't know if Essie is just testing if it can change it or not, and when it can, it accepts it sooner just because it ran into that brick wall over and over.
Yeah, no, NE tries to bargain with reality, is what I think. It reminds me of the idea of like FEs, like I've thought of as like emotional compromise, where you're like, I feel this, well, I feel this. Well, we have to find a win-win, so we got to both be willing to like emotionally compromise. And like TE does that logically, where it's like, okay, let's like find a price point or something. I don't know. I'm not good at that. But like, it's like, well, your reality is this and my reality is this. What if we could find a way for them to both be in the same reality? And SE is like, there's literally a brick wall here. What are you going to do? And he's like, tap, tap. No, it's not. It's a secret door.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
You got to find the brick that opens it.
Yeah, because NE is like, well, haven't you seen Harry Potter? Haven't you seen the Cross of Narnia? Nothing's ever what it seems, bruh. And SE is like, okay. like that's how I see it. And like, but I do think that sometimes NE can cling to a possibility longer than it should if it's like resistant to it not working. Like, for example, if I like tap, tap, oh wait, nope, it's just a brick wall, and I can move on and be okay with that, I'm not going to keep tap, tap, tapping. But I think SE sometimes almost gives up on this sort of reality when it's like, wait a minute, you forgot about this brick or something, you didn't check anything. You just looked at it, it's like, oh, brick wall. And then SE's like, oh, yeah.
That's interesting. How do you feel about like, okay, so how I feel about like SE and I working together is like, if I'm doing something, you can't give me like step-by-step instructions. Like I just won't be able, you're in the way of like the SE information that I have to take in to like kind of figure out what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you can like tweak what I'm doing. Like you can say more this, less that, like add this. But if you start to say like add a whole nother thing or take away this whole thing, then we have to stop what we're doing and like NI about it. So then, but the NI is still like a fuzzy, like a general fuzzy picture kind of, where it's like, I just need to know like the important things, like what my goals are going to be. And then all these little details I'll fill in as I go.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it makes me think about the idea that like if NE comes in and tries to like help you, it doesn't know which intuitive details are more foundational for like what you're trying to accomplish, right? So we shift those. It's like, hey, it's like, oh sorry. Like, oh.
Yeah, it's almost like it's in the way.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it's intuitive. So then I have to go back in my NI, and then it's like pressing pause on reality when I need to be like taking in, like, you know, pressing play and taking in the information as it comes in.
Because like I feel like it's like this idea that like SE thinks, well, reality tends to go blah 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 way, and then he's like, but what about this? And then SE's like, I didn't think about that. Wait, I have to make a new goalpost, and like, I guess was because you're a P, you have to synthesize information. So if NE is like, have you considered this? It's probably really like overwhelming then, isn't it, in a sense?
I think the higher up SE is, the more energy you have to do it. So like how I was saying before, if like I have a bad experience and I'm gonna say, okay, what are the like, what's the pattern here that, you know, all these things share? Like I'll do that, but not as much as like, NI dominant or like SE dominant will like kind of be like, well, you don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, how can you tell that? Or, you know, like, why should you have any opinion on it? And they'll be very, actually, I see it as brave because they just like go head on into something.
I do rely on that. Wait, this actually is so, yeah, because like, I think that the first time you caught my attention, because I was like analyzing this ISFP guy, was because you said something about like once burned. It made me think about the idea like once burned, twice shy. And I actually used to think that, is this NESI? And I was like, I was thinking about it. I was like, no, I actually don't think the term once burned, twice shy doesn't actually apply to NE, because yeah, I have all these SI scars, but it's never actually stopped me from like trying to test reality, but I'll kind of do it half-assedly, like, oh, look, this person, all people are bad, see, but I'll still be doing something, versus I feel like ISPs can almost, if they get hurt too, or their NI gets destroyed too bad about something, they'll like be like averse. Do you resonate with that in some?
Yes, but I usually like, and it might take me a very long time, but I'll try to understand it and understand why. And I might be stuck on that until I understand everything.
Wait,
like,
what does it mean when you're stuck on it? Like you just like
actually I think it looks like I might move on or like ready for something else to happen before I understand it, but I don't stop like thinking about like why that happened, or you know,
okay, so you question the meaning of like something or something. Gotcha. I guess I don't question the meaning of something. I just go, oh, what I do when I obsess is I don't question, I conclude. So I'm intuitively like, yep, look, more proof that I'm never going to find love. Look, proof. And I'll sit there and I'll just think, oh, I'm just never going to find love. And look at all these details are adding up, as opposed to, why can't I find love? Why? And I think I would be better at like questioning that. So it's kind of like almost like you're internally testing reality, versus I externally do things half-assedly, but like inside I'm like, nah, it's not gonna work. I'm gonna go through the motions of dating this guy, but he's gonna ditch me too, or something. I don't know. It's so interesting.
So do you ever feel like when you conclude that kind of stuff, do you feel like I mean, obviously you're getting stuck in like what happened before. Do you ever go, okay, maybe like I need to change something, or you just don't, you just look at what all like confirmed what happened before?
I think I'm too busy confirming what happened before, because I don't have TI, so I'm still like, did that even happen? I don't even know what is happening. What is life like? Yeah, and like I guess I go, what's wrong with me, as opposed to what do I need to do to change? Because I like, especially when I was younger, I used to have this idea of like, I can try and do these things, but they have nothing to do with actually shifting anything or something. Like it'd feel like banging on a wall, not being able to actually like have anyone hear you, or being able to bang down the wall. Like I just feel like, what is the point of thinking about what I could be doing what if it doesn't actually change the outcome? So it's like wagering your emotional state on what you can do just seems really risky to me. But now I'm like a little better being like, oh, like what I started keeping an archive of like every accomplishment I've had, and not like a TE, like good job, you like won an award. More like I learned to resolve conflict better. I learned how to drive even when I was scared. I like did all these things that give me self-respect. I really had to learn that, in addition to also questioning my conviction of like reality, which is actually very faulty because it's extroverted intuition. It's like very like, oh, like smoke and mirrors and stuff. So I feel like it took me a long time to think about the question of what can I do better? What can I do different? Because like it used to be very painful, because I'd be like, excuse me, asking that question actually challenges like this weird identity preoccupation I have with, well, I'm just different because I like just have a flawed outlook or on life and people just hate me, or it would be absolving responsibility, because that's like the short-term approach to like fixing your pain and like a band-aid, not like actually removing like a splinter.
That's interesting. That seems sad.
Yeah, it is. Like also you have to realize I'm an Enneagram type 4, so it's double the trouble, because I think type 4 with individualism such a forefront of my brain, I'm always thinking about my relationship to, am I too special or am I not special enough? And because I'm always asking myself this question as opposed to any of the others, I'm therefore just like, nah, like just floating in space, like kind of self-indulgently. I think it's being self-indulgent and being afraid. So it's like, I guess you could say, it'd be accurate to say I'm kind of a coward in some regard, even if I am very emotionally strong about like whatever. I sometimes break myself more than I need to, if you look at it from a TI perspective. And wait, sorry, I actually have one thing to say about that. Is my thing I want you to respond to is, I see, because I'm on Twitter sometimes and I look at YouTube comments and I'm in a Facebook group, I see people talk a lot about FI is authenticity, emotional authenticity, like they always know what they feel. But I was thinking like, bro, I know what I feel, and like that is I suck. That's real, but I don't know what I think. I don't know what limiting belief or opinion about my impact in the world is preventing me from my success. So in a sense, I'm not very authentic in an introverted thinking way, versus I feel like it is a very honoring thyself. Like the idea of authenticity is it honors thyself. But I feel like for a TI user, honoring yourself and honoring your standards of truth and not leaving things unsaid that don't like create the correct perception of truth for you and other people's minds, like not doing that shit is very inauthentic. So I think it's like, it's like an attack on my own inner truth to not fight for my existence, because what is true is that I'm allowed to be here. And I think as an NFP, I haven't always believed that. So I think that's something I've really, really been thinking about lately. I'm like, dude, TI users, we can like be like, oh, you guys don't have any like real emotional archives. Like, you don't know what you feel, but you know what you think. And like, holy shit, like every time you spend money or just like take care of your friends or do anything, you at least know why. And I think with NI, it's even more piercing. So I think that what I've been learning in the last few months is that like I need to check in with my opinions of myself and my opinions of other things, because without that I can't abide by having consistent sense of truth, and without that I can't impact reality. So yeah, my speech.
That makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people who even like SI farther down or FI farther down, sorry, they kind of don't, they'll have times where like they don't listen to other people when they are a new person when they talk, and then as the new person kind of figures them out, then they'll start to like listen to them. But they have to, they're not going to extend their hand to like meet them halfway, but they kind of have to, and I don't know if it's just because it's so far down, but they have to shut out everybody else to be able to listen to themselves. And like what you said about like you're allowed to exist, I kind of noticed that where they kind of either don't believe it or they have to be like, yeah, I'm allowed, because it's like you can't exist with other people or you're not as confident.
Yeah, and like go ahead.
I don't know with TI, like I don't necessarily know, like I view it as it's almost separate from me. It's a part of me, but it's almost separate. Like I feel like it's a bunch of like, you should do this, you should do that, and it's never like, yeah, but what do I want to do? It's like, but I want to do what I should do.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't ever have like a conflicting.
That's so interesting, because when people say, well, you should believe in yourself, and I actually am aligned with intending to, I'm like, oh, thanks for the reminder. Some NFPs get triggered by that because if you don't try to work on your inner shadow TI, which I'm crazy about working on your shadow, we are at the mercy of everyone else's thoughts. So you know how like FE, if someone feels bad, it makes you feel just really insanely guilty, as opposed to, haha, too bad, which is what honestly FI can be like. I can be very spiteful. Someone's like, you hurt me, and I'm like, I should care. Even to friends, I'll be like, am I supposed to care? And like, it's like very cruel. But like, on the other hand, I feel like with E, if someone questions my competency, I'll just be like, oh, am I allowed to exist if I'm not being like, if I don't make sense to anyone, do I even make sense to, or like, it's like this idea of like, if I'm not able to be understood by people, I might as well not be real. If I'm not accessible logically, then I don't have a stake in determining my reality, because it's like I let other people do it for me or something.
I kind of do the same with FE though. Like if it's like, I'm over here doing my own thing, and if nobody cares, and it's like, I mean, I don't feel like, you know, I'm nothing, but it's like, well, I guess I just have to go over somewhere by myself. I don't have a way of like, let's be a part of society or figure out how to do that.
Validation from the FE tribe. For me, it's like TE validation, where it's like, do people get me, or am I just confusing, and am I eternally doomed to be confusing? And I'm like, to me, confusion equates to rejection, equates to being alone. So the worst thing a guy could say to me in dating is, you're just kind of too confusing, overwhelming, too complex. I'm like, oh, then I guess I would have been better off being simpler, but I can't change who I am either. You know, it's like,
yeah, but at the same time, you're like, but I like not being simple.
Exactly, because I'm like, well, I like being not simple, so I guess that means that no one's ever gonna love me as much as I love myself, or something like that. It's just like, dude, like such a defeatism, as opposed to, well, maybe he can be less confused if I explained this more. I just go, oh, okay. So it's like they could be saying it really well meaningly, and I could be like, oh, well, I'm just, yeah, like it's like doubled down because you're so just like triggered. So yeah, that's so interesting though, because like I think I did idealize TI without realizing that they don't have emotional conviction, so they're still pushover to the FE, even if a pushover to the TE. So.
And I notice a lot, like how you said, like they're still at, well, I'm like this, so you know, of the introverted judging function. That's,
yeah,
you know, you still have the thing that's kind of the same.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. Wow, I feel like I learned so much. And also, we have been talking for like an hour and a half, so let's probably stop the recording. But
Yeah,
I definitely would love to talk to you more, because I'm like, I don't know how tired you are, but I'm like, wow, I could go on for like hours about several of these tangents and like loop it back. But like, yeah, like anyways,
yeah, for sure.
Bye for now. But thank you so much for like being willing to like, you know, talk and like converse with like this internet stranger. Well, I guess like you see my videos, so it's not like you were like, oh, what's it gonna be like, Sal? But like, yeah, I really appreciate your contributions to the community, because you're the kind of person that will like write lengthy paragraphs about how you work. And because I have TE, I really care about equal representation of every type. And I do think that the ISPs don't get talked about enough, to where we get to see their complex inner worlds. Because to me, I'm like, they're so complex. I love them. What is it like to have NE? It's actually really freeing and stuff. Because like, I also view my NE as like separate from me, as you view your dominant function, which is TI, as separate. So like, to me, I'm just like, you know, like I feel like if I was less into my NE, like little drug dom function, I would live a happier life. So meeting so many ISPs in my life has really helped me tap into this intuitive inner conviction. Like, what am I living my life for? What am I questioning? To not question as often is actually bad. Okay, sorry, I'm like going on my soapbox, but TLDR, thank you so much for like being down to explain that. Like, I hope you didn't think that was stressful or anything for me.
No, not at all. Thank you for having me on. It was interesting, and it wasn't too much. I always like kind of hearing stuff that I've never, or I can't think of.
Yay, I'm glad. Yeah, because like, you know, I did kind of like mention, yeah, I do like feel vulnerable about like being too much for people. Because now that I know that not everyone likes ideating and stuff, I'm just like, I gotta check in to make sure, because I don't really read the room that well with FE. I don't actually know. Like, I know you're like, this is an intellectually stimulating conversation, but did you even want to have it? It's like that kind of thing. Like, so I'm really glad and feel very, very validated. And also, yeah, like I'm gonna be honest that I still seek the validation of TI to be like, you're smart, you're insightful, because like I don't like have that conviction that I am. Like, to me, if other people tell me I am, I'm gonna like light up way more and take that way more seriously than if I thought I was insightful, because I am afraid of existing in a vacuum. So when STP,
well, you
like,
are.
STP is like, you're real. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go live my life better now. So anyways, on that note, I'm gonna stop the recording now, but we should definitely talk again sometime. This was a great conversation. Hey.
Yeah.